Kumedisal Oblesud. Hi, and welcome back to Icelandic for Foreigners. In this video, I'm going to be going over some of my language learning tips. These tips apply no matter what language you're learning. So, though I'll generally be talking about Icelandic in this video, really you can apply these principles no matter what the language. Now, if you're an experienced language learner, you probably already have methods that work for you, so you can just go ahead and skip this video if you want. But for some of you, I know that Icelandic is the first language you've ever tried to learn, so maybe you'll benefit from some of my advice. Now, my big overarching tip for this video is that you as a learner need to spend at least some time on all the different aspects of language communication. Those aspects are grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, reading and writing, listening comprehension, and fluency. Now, you don't need to focus on every single one of these aspects every day. There are definitely going to be days where you're focusing on one more than the others. You just need to make sure that at some point you're going in and focusing on each one of these. Not only will that make your learning more interesting and give it more variety, but each of these aspects really is very important for language communication. A lot of people, when they first start learning their first foreign language, think that they need to learn the new foreign words for every word that they know in their native language, and then they just need to swap out the new words for their old words. Now, of course, it's much more complicated than that, and focusing on these different aspects that I mentioned will help make sure that you're noticing the differences between your native language and your new language. Of course, depending on your purpose in learning the new language, you might be able to disregard some of these aspects. For example, if you're most interested in reading Old Norse or Old Icelandic texts, you don't really need to worry so much about pronunciation, fluency, and listening comprehension. But if your goal is conversation with native speakers, then yes, you need to focus on all of these aspects to some extent. So now I'm going to give you one tip for each one of these different aspects that I mentioned. Now, of course, I have a lot more tips than this, but for this video, I'm just going to give you one on each. So first, grammar. Now, grammar has to do with the sentence structure and the forms of the words that we're using, such as verb conjugations and noun declensions. My tip is learn a little bit more about your native language's grammar first, if possible, especially the parts of speech, verb tenses and moods, and also the parts of a sentence like the subject, the objects, and the topics. You don't need to get super deep into it because your native language may be very different from Icelandic, which is okay. But if you just learn the basics so that you can talk and think about grammar a little bit better, it will really go a long way when you start learning Icelandic grammar. My next tip is for vocabulary. Vocabulary means the words that you need to know in order to express yourself. My tip is write down new vocabulary words every day, but don't write down too many vocabulary words, and don't write down words that are too advanced for your language level. Especially in the beginning, you need to be very selective about the words that you decide to write down. Only write down words that are at your level and that you're going to use again soon. For most people, learning new words, it takes up a lot of brain power. Learning a new language in general takes up a lot of brain power. And you need to be very careful how you spend that brain power. If you spend a couple hours learning a new language every day, you're going to hear many new words every day. And my recommendation is don't write every single one of them down. You need to focus on the words that are at your level. For example, if you don't know the word for something like tree in your target language, then you're probably not quite at the level where you should be writing down vocabulary words like pollution or economy. Now, these words are very important, and if you want to become an effective communicator, you'll need to learn them at some point. But at this point, it might just not be at your level. There will always be some words at your level that you should write down. This isn't to say that you can't occasionally write down more advanced words even when you're a beginner. You definitely can, especially if it's something that you're interested in, or if it's a word that's important for an assignment that you're doing. Just in general, try to keep to words that are at your skill level. Also, don't write down too many of them. Even now, I only write down 3 or 4 words a day at maximum, just because that's all my brain can handle of new words. Next, pronunciation. My tip is set aside time for both informal and formal pronunciation practice. Now, informal practice, that's listening and repeating and imitating native speakers. This should be happening during every conversation you have with native speakers. You should be thinking about pronunciation a little bit. But I also want to emphasize that you need to have time for formal pronunciation study. That means taking time to actually understand how the pronunciation works, to use books, videos, or audio lessons to actually learn the sound system of the new language. Icelandic is going to have language sounds that don't exist in your native language, no matter what your native language is. As far as I know, there are no languages out there that have the exact same sound system as Icelandic. Your brain is programmed to your native language. So when you hear a new sound, one of two things could happen. First, your brain might just not hear it. It'll completely ignore it, which means when you are then saying that word later, you're just going to leave that sound out, and it's going to sound strange to native speakers, and they might not even understand you. The second thing that can happen is your brain might get confused and tell you that you're hearing a sound from your native language. Then when you repeat the word later, you're going to repeat it with your native sound, which will also be confusing to native speakers, or maybe not even comprehensible. Because your brain gets so confused with all these different sounds, this will lead you to mispronounce words, mishear words, and it'll seriously get in the way of your communication. So formal practice will help you start to recognize the new sounds and begin to reprogram your brain to hear and make the new sounds. The videos I've made on Icelandic pronunciation can be a great supplement to your formal practice. Next, reading and writing. My tip is just learn the writing system as soon as possible, no matter what language you're learning. Just get it out of the way at the very beginning of starting to learn the new language. Now, the one exception to this is character-based writing systems like Chinese. You can't just get the characters out of the way. It takes a long time. But if the language has an alphabet or a syllabary or an abjad, then I really recommend you just learn the writing system as soon as possible. Now, since most of you watching this video probably speak English, most of you probably know how to read and write in the Latin alphabet, which will give you a good head start. But if you're not very good with English letters, the bright side about Icelandic is the spelling is pretty straightforward, much more straightforward than English. So learn the Latin letters and the sounds as soon as possible if you can. Next, listening comprehension. Especially at the beginning, don't worry about understanding casual native speech. That's just unrealistic. You're going to need at least 1,000 vocabulary words before you'll start to understand native conversations. You can definitely still listen to casual native speech for fun and for exposure, but don't listen to it thinking that you're going to understand everything. So my tip is, in the beginning, just find recordings of words being pronounced or find recordings that have text that you can follow along with. For example, when I was learning Icelandic, I used this book a lot. It's called Learning Icelandic. And in it, it has these fake conversations between Icelanders, and there's a CD that comes with the book that you can listen to and hear the conversation while you're reading it. This is very helpful, especially when you're starting out. This is the best way to increase your listening comprehension. Finally, let's talk about fluency. Fluency is expressing yourself in a connected way without stopping. It means that you're speaking on the spot without having very much time to think about it beforehand. Now, most people understand the need for formal speaking practice. And what I mean by that is sitting down with a native speaker and speaking with them and having them correct your mistakes. That's very important. But my tip is that you also find time for informal fluency practice. That means that you sit down with a native speaker or just someone who's learning the language and you just speak. And you ask the other person to only correct you if you make really big mistakes or if they just completely don't understand you. But other than that, you just practice expressing yourself even if you're using the wrong words, even if you're using bad grammar. You just practice expressing yourself anyway. Now, I'm not saying do this all the time, and I'm not saying that you should only do this, and I'm definitely not saying that you should ignore grammar. As I mentioned earlier, grammar is absolutely essential, and you definitely need to spend time on it. As you work on grammar separately, your grammar will get better while you're speaking. But I guess the overarching principle behind this is you can't afford to wait until you can express yourself perfectly to start talking, because otherwise it's going to take a very long time for you to start talking. And the sooner you get yourself talking and becoming comfortable with speaking, even if you're doing it wrong, it'll actually make learning the grammar and the pronunciation principles easier, and you'll learn vocabulary faster. So those are the language tips I have for you today. Thanks very much for watching. I'm interested to know if any of these were helpful, so feel free to leave a comment below, and good luck learning. Bless, bless.